If you play a song without making a single mistake, I'll give you my hotel. That phrase sliced through the ballroom like a blade of ice. No one breathed, no one blinked, no one believed what they had just heard. At the center of the luxurious Grand Royal Hall in Boston, glowing under golden chandeliers and cathedral-high arched windows, stood a woman famous for her arrogance, Charlotte Bowmont, heir to a hotel empire that controlled half the East Coast, and she was pointing her manicured finger directly at a simple worker, a worker who was supposed to be invisible. His name was Elias Carter, 28 years old, wearing a crisp white shirt under a black apron, yellow cleaning gloves still on his hands, and an expression that tried, and almost succeeded, to hide the sting of humiliation. But Charlotte wasn't interested in empathy. Not that night. Not in that ballroom packed with elites, investors, and models, dressed as if life itself were a catwalk. She leaned forward, eyes glowing with cruelty mixed with theatrical provocation, while guests gasped, hands flying to their mouths as if watching a wild spectacle unfold. "Come on, darling. Prove you can do more than scrub floors." Behind them, the black Steinway grand piano waited, silent, majestic, like a judge about to witness history. The entire ballroom leaned closer. The waiters froze. The orchestra lowered their instruments. Even the lights seemed to sharpen. No one imagined what was about to happen, because Elias carried a secret buried for years, a secret he hadn't touched, literally, since the worst night of his life. But tonight, Charlotte's cruelty struck a nerve. Something old awoke, something powerful, something no one in that room was prepared for. Humiliation had lit the fuse. And when a wounded heart decides to remember who it really is, no wealth, no status, no empire can hold the truth back. This is the story of how an invisible worker, humiliated in front of America's elite, transformed an entire ballroom, and perhaps even a life, with nothing but a single song. And if you think you know how this ends, you're not ready. The silence inside the Grand Royal Hall felt heavy enough to bend the air. Charlotte still had her perfectly manicured finger raised, every inch of her face displaying her usual arrogant delight, certain she was about to create yet another spectacle at someone else's expense. But Elias didn't react the way everyone expected. He didn't lower his head. He didn't back away. He didn't apologize. He simply breathed. Inside, however, a storm raged. Charlotte's words, sharp as blades, collided with memories he spent years burying. A life completely different from the one he lived now. A life without gloves. A life where his uniform wasn't an apron. A life where the stage was his home, and the piano his heartbeat. But no one there knew that. To them, to Charlotte, to the wealthy guests, to the perfectly dressed crowd, Elias was just another anonymous worker. Charlotte let out a short, cruel laugh. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? Or are you already sweating at the thought of putting your janitor hands on a piano like this?" More laughter spread around her like wildfire. Still, Elias stared at the piano. That piano, its shine, its polished surface reflecting the room, something calling him back. Charlotte noticed and stepped closer. "Wake up, darling. You don't belong here, but if you want to try, please do. It'll be entertaining." Phones lifted, cameras ready, a cruel show about to begin. And then the voice inside him, the one he tried to silence for years, finally roared, "It's now or never." Elias lifted his face, met Charlotte's eyes, and said, "I accept." A bomb went off in the room. Gasps, hands to mouths, whispers, nervous laughter. Charlotte blinked, unable to hide her shock. "Excuse me, what?" "I said I accept, I'll play." She narrowed her eyes, recalculating everything. Then she walked to her table, grabbed a shiny golden key, the key to her most famous hotel, and raised it like a trophy. "If you play a full song without mistakes," her smile twisted, "I'll give you my hotel." The room exploded. Elias stayed quiet. Because this wasn't about the hotel, or Charlotte, or humiliation. This was about reclaiming something he'd lost. Memories from his past hit him like a wave. His old concerts, his proud parents, his first Steinway, the tragedy that ended everything. His chest tightened, but his feet moved forward. 1 step, 2, 3. The crowd opened a path, and for the first time in 5 years, Elias touched the piano again. He pulled the bench, sat, placed his hands over the keys, and the room held its breath. The piano bench creaked softly as Elias adjusted his posture. His body looked still, but inside he was shaking. The silence in the grand royal hall was absolute. Charlotte watched with a smirk, amused, arrogant, certain the humiliation was about to begin. "Go on, darling. We're waiting." Elias didn't hear her. Not really. All he could hear was his heartbeat, wild, uneven. 5 years without touching a piano, 5 years trying to bury the past. But now, he had no escape. He breathed deeply, closed his eyes, and finally, he played. The first note was soft, almost hesitant, a single key, pressed so lightly it sounded like a whisper. Someone laughed. Another whispered, "Knew it. He's going to embarrass himself." But then came the second note, and the third, and suddenly, something shifted. The insecurity melted. The left hand found a rhythm. The right hand shaped the melody. A song was born. Simple, childlike, familiar. But there was something different about it. Something alive, something emotional, something no one expected from a man in yellow cleaning gloves. Slowly, conversations faded, smirks disappeared, phones lowered. The entire ballroom stopped. Charlotte's expression changed. "What is this?" Elias continued, eyes closed, breathing the music. It flowed from him naturally, effortlessly, and then he transformed the melody. Added harmonies, built variations, introduced techniques only trained musicians understood, and the guests realized this wasn't a janitor fumbling through a tune, this was a musician. Charlotte stepped back, her confidence cracking. The music grew, became deeper, tragic, beautiful. Memories flooded Elias. His father cheering in the front row, his mother squeezing his hands before competitions, his professor calling him a rare talent. Then the accident, the loss, the silence. His fingers trembled. But he didn't stop. Every note was a tear, every chord, a memory, every variation, a confession. The crowd felt it. Women covered their mouths. Men leaned forward. Waiters froze mid-step. Charlotte whispered, He shouldn't know how to play like that," her friend replied. "Charlotte, this is real talent." The music climbed into a complex, difficult passage. Elias executed it perfectly. The room gasped. "He's a virtuoso. This is unreal." Charlotte's world began to collapse. And then, Elias opened his eyes. Pain. Strength. Liberation. He stared directly at her and played harder. Every note seemed to say, "I am not invisible. I am not less. I am not what you called me." Charlotte felt it like a punch. The final notes echoed, powerful and delicate. Silence. Then, a single clap. Another. Another. Until the whole ballroom rose in a standing ovation. Elias lifted his hands from the keys. The world would never see him the same way again. But Charlotte's nightmare had just begun. The applause felt endless. Elias remained seated for several seconds, breathing hard, as if for the first time in years, the air finally reached his lungs. Charlotte Manford stood frozen, her eyes locked on him, her face pale, her world collapsing inch by inch, but the night wasn't done with her. When the applause faded, Elias stood. And then, a refined older woman approached him slowly. "Excuse me, but I know you." Charlotte's head snapped toward them so fast she nearly stumbled. Elias froze. "No, not now, not like this." "You," she continued, "you played at Carnegie Hall a few years ago, didn't you?" The room fell into a vacuum of silence. Carnegie Hall. The name echoed like thunder. Someone else shouted, "It's him, Elias Turner, the prodigy pianist." Charlotte's mouth fell open. Elias felt the weight of 1,000 memories crush his chest. More voices rose. He vanished after the accident. I remember the article about his parents. He was supposed to become a legend. How is he working here? Charlotte was shaking now. Her control shattered. The older woman whispered, Elias, you were extraordinary. Why are you here? He swallowed, looked down, and said softly, Because sometimes life destroys everything at once. A silence so deep it ached filled the hall. Then someone muttered, And Charlotte called this man worthless. People turned toward her, judgment in every face. Charlotte panicked. No! This is being blown out of... But the crowd wasn't listening. Someone yelled, Who recorded everything? Dozens of hands lifted phones. I posted it on TikTok, already at 80,000 views. It's on Instagram too, and Twitter. Going viral. Charlotte put her hands on her head. No, 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 this can't be happening. Elias watched, not proud, not vengeful, just tired. A businessman stepped forward. You promised your hotel if he played without mistakes. And he did, shouted someone else. Charlotte backed up. It was a joke, a joke. No one actually thought. A promise is a promise. The hall roared in agreement. And then the famous music critic approached, tears in his eyes. Elias, what you did tonight was one of the greatest performances I've ever witnessed. He turned to the audience. He isn't just a musician. He is an artist, a rare, powerful artist. Charlotte's knees nearly gave out. The critic stared directly at her. And you humiliated a world-class artist. A collective gasp filled the ballroom. Elias tried to calm them. Please, let's not turn this into a witch hunt. But momentum was against Charlotte. Anger filled the room. A young waitress raised her voice. People like her always treat us like nothing. More joined. She did it in front of all of us. Now she has to face it. No more arrogance. Charlotte felt herself unraveling. But nothing came out. Then Elias did something extraordinary. He sat at the piano again. Charlotte blinked, confused, frightened. What are you doing? He looked at her with something no one expected. Showing everyone you don't have to humiliate people to be heard. He played soft, gentle, painful, beautiful. Charlotte pressed a hand to her chest. The truth hit her like a tidal wave. Her eyes filled with tears. Her ego crumbled. Her image cracked. Her armor shattered. When the last note faded, no one clapped. Because no one could breathe. And Elias finally said, Charlotte, now you decide who you want to be. The entire ballroom looked at her. The world waited. And the climax of the night detonated right there. Charlotte stood in the center of the ballroom like someone left behind after a storm. Every pair of eyes was on her, every judgment too. But for the first time in her life, she looked small. Not because of status, not because of wealth, but because of truth. Elias watched her. No anger, no cruelty. Just a deep, painful humanity. Charlotte took a shaky breath and stepped forward. Another step. She walked until she stood right before the piano, before Elias, before the truth. Her voice broke softly. I was wrong. The room tightened with silence. I treated you as less, as someone who didn't deserve respect because I thought my money made me better. A tear rolled down. I was wrong. She turned to Elias. I humiliated you, and you answered with art. Her lips trembled. You showed me the truth, not to destroy me, but to show me who I really was. Another tear, then another. I never want to be that person again. Elias stepped closer. Charlotte, forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it changes the path forward. She nodded. Someone shouted, And the hotel? The crowd echoed, She promised! It's recorded. She has to give it. Charlotte's face flushed with panic. Elias raised a hand. I don't want the hotel. I never did. Everyone fell silent. What I want is my life back, my music, my future. Charlotte looked at him with wet eyes. And then Elias spoke the sentence that shifted everything. So, Charlotte, here's my proposal. The room braced itself. You won't give me your hotel. You'll give me something far more valuable. Charlotte swallowed. What is it? Elias breathed deeply. A chance. Silence. A long silence. You will fund my return to music. And in return, I'll teach you how to see people. The room inhaled sharply. It was unexpected. It was wise. It was human. Charlotte covered her mouth, crying. You'd do that for me? You'd do that for me. Elias extended his hand. Charlotte hesitated and shook it. The entire room erupted in applause. The music critic approached, emotional. Elias, the world needs your music. I want to be the first to tell your story. Elias nodded. Include her transformation too. This is about two humans growing together. Charlotte lowered her head. The staff approached shyly. Mrs. Damon, the head housekeeper, asked, Mr. Elias, will you play again? He looked at the piano, then at Charlotte. Yes, but this time, for everyone. Charlotte wiped her face. I can help with that. Free concerts, cultural programs. Elias smiled softly. First, learn to talk to your employees with respect. She laughed through tears. Fair enough. Elias returned to the piano. This last song is about second chances. And he played. The melody was soft, hopeful, new. A song about redemption, about re-beginning. When the final note faded, the ballroom rose in a standing ovation, and for the first time in years, Elias smiled without pain. If this story touched you, hit the like button. It helps more people find this video. Comment below. Everyone deserves a second chance. And of course, subscribe for more powerful stories that prove dignity is worth more than any wealth.